Hi everyone, I hope you're doing great out there. This is my classroom application project and I am Dave Rudy. Tonight we're going to talk about the value, or today, the value of the cut-up story activity. I am calling this from sort of that concepts of print thing that we do with our young readers to stylistics and the study of stylistics, that thing that we do with our older students. Clay writes that cutting up the story, which the child composed and wrote and reread a number of times, provides the child with opportunities to relate reading to writing, writing to speaking, and reading to speaking. The interrelationships of these three language activities becomes implicitly and explicitly apparent to children. And this is that activity, right, that takes place in the second 10. It asks students to, again, situate work and specifically language they have created in the right order. As that becomes implicitly and explicitly apparent, Clay writes, to children as they learn about assembling messages, one-to-one correspondence of spoken words and written words, directional behaviors, checking behaviors, self-correcting behaviors, monitoring behaviors, and breaking oral language into segments. The cut-up story is taken home in an envelope that has the correct version written on the outside, recorded by the teacher after the lesson. Something I should have known, and I almost feel like I just learned, is this: it's the known text. The child's competence can be demonstrated to his or her family. The story written on the envelope provides a correct model that the child may or may not consult as needed. So here, the image in the middle, you can see one that I'd worked on with my student. We composed the story, "It is time for work." And so I always did a good job, I felt like, of putting that into an envelope, but I never did a good job of writing it physically on the envelope. Now, whether that's redundant or not, I mean, "it is time for work," I'm sure is something that his writer, my students' parents are able to put back together. But to be able to have that sort of written on the envelope is just a nice little procedural note kind of clue that I think is important. So why is all of this so important to Clay? Earlier in literacy lessons, designed for individuals, Clay also writes that during writing and cut-up stories, when the child writes his story and reassembles the cut-up story, he rehearses the construction of words and lines of text from left to right. So that really goes again back to the title of the presentation, that concepts of print notion. With minimal talk, help the child to use the space on the writing page appropriately. The teacher might point to a definite starting position in the top left-hand corner and indicate the way to go. She might suggest when and where to start a new line. She ought to anticipate when a word will be too big for the space available. Initially, the teacher might help the child to leave a finger space between words, saying, "It is easier to read." Now, here was the sort of exciting part about my presentation, and I just think the project in general. Thankfully, before COVID-19, I was able to sort of apply this cut-up story, recreating this message activity with older high school students. So here's an image of one of my students working on this. And how it can be used with older kids is simple. It's the same structure that Clay writes about in literacy lessons designed for individuals. It's just for the big kids. So it was able to make it into a game, and the only way that someone can get it quote unquote right is for them to remember what they wrote and then how it all fits together. So it often allowed the students to sort of reteach each other different stories that they had come up with. So again, that's an image of one of those students working on it. Here's another image of the student kind of creating the cut-up story. And basically what I saw was it was very engaging. It really does apply to all levels, K-12. It tended to take a little bit longer than maybe the 3 to 4 minutes that we would deploy that strategy. And the sentences always seem to be way too long, 30, 40 words. They often were very anecdotal. Kids would just sort of tell stories. And they did lack really upper level vocabulary. Oftentimes there were a lot of mono or dual syllabic words, easy vocabulary, and just really sort of reinforce maybe just a basic understanding of sentence clauses. So again, this goes back to that notion of stylistics, how we structure our sentences. Very, very often we use modifiers at the beginning of sentences. I do that when I speak. We have independent clauses, dependent clauses, being able to work on complete sentences or incomplete sentences with students. And sort of that grammar notion was very impactful. Something else I saw, and back to page 108, and actually back to Clay, were some really important questions and prompts that I hope we all can think about. Did the child provide you with any new evidence of knowledge or processing that you did not know that they could attend to? And that was almost sort of universally true with that activity. Here are some of the other prompts. Is the child monitoring this recognition of their own composed sentence? Did you see any self-correcting? Perhaps evidence of checking and correcting could be observed before the pieces of the story were actually manipulated. Did you notice the child change the level of their attention? Did you provide, in what parts of the reconstruction did the child work speedily, fluently, and correctly? And when did the child have to slow down? Well, there was a lot of real positives that came from having some of the high schoolers try the cut up story activity. Thank you guys very much for your time. I hope everyone is doing well, that everybody, of course, is staying safe. I do miss our class, and certainly do miss that time on Mondays to be able to think about, teaching reading and using our reading recovery procedures and systems. And again, I miss you guys, and I hope everybody's doing well. Thank you very much for your time, and we will talk soon.